All right. So my name's Kylie. I am a human resources director for the Tualatin Valley Water District. We are a public water utility in the Beaverton area, which is located just outside of Portland, Oregon. And I have been in my role here for just about 6 months, but I've been in HR a lot longer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself just a bit so you kind of get to know me. And then we're going to jump into some tips about landing your government job and transferring from a different industry, specifically the tech industry. All right. So why the hell would you listen to me? Well, let me tell you, I think that I am a real life combination of only the very best characters on the show Parks and Recreation. And you'll see a lot of people in government. We tend to love that show because it is a really good representation of some of the things that we get to do working for government. So I bring Leslie Knope's passion for public service, Ron Swanson's disdain for bullshit, Don Amigle's emphasis on work-life balance and treating yourself, and a healthy dose of sarcasm from the best character, April Ludgate. But beyond that, I have hired a lot of amazing government employees, whether as the hiring manager or as part of a hiring team working in human resources. So I've brought a lot of people into different government organizations, and been doing it for years. I'll jump to the bottom bullet. I've been in HR for 10, always in the public sector, but in government for 20. I actually started when I was like 16 as a lifeguard and swim teacher, but I transitioned into communications, public engagement, community outreach, equity and inclusion, and then finally found my home in HR. I've been recognized by my peers as a fresh voice in this field. HR has that perception of being really boring, all about the rules and kind of old school, and that is not my style. And I'm really motivated to bring talent and new skill sets and perspectives into the government sector because I think there's a lot of value in that. So I'm really motivated to do that. The other two remaining bullets are just the stuff that I've studied and to show that I can pass a test. But I do have a master's in public administration degree from Portland State University. And I have demonstrated that I can pass the SHRM, Senior Certified Professional Exam. They're an HR professional association. My socials are up there, as well as my email address. I will have that on the last slide. Twitter is where I'm most active. It hasn't fallen yet, and I'm going to stick it out. LinkedIn is also a great place to find me. I'm a little less responsive on that, mostly because I just scroll Twitter aimlessly most of the time. Instagram is where you can find some fresh, hot HR memes, and email is a great way to reach me. So let's talk about why you want to work for government, why this would be a good role for you. I know this has been covered throughout the day, but I want to emphasize some things that I notice. Specifically for me, I love to have a positive impact in my community, and I've always worked at the local government level. So I've been with special districts and cities, but there's also a lot of really positive impacts within the state system and the federal system. I am continually impressed with the caliber, professionalism, passion, and motivation of my coworkers and the people that I get to work with every day. That has been consistent throughout my career. I am always impressed with the folks that I get to spend most of my day with. And government work has a lot of job security that you don't find in the private sector. It's not guaranteed, they still have some budget cuts that happen. You can still get fired from a job, but it's a lot less volatile than the private sector. And that's a big positive for me because my better half runs a food cart, and that is like up and down. And so I'm the consistent one and get to carry our health insurance benefits and that good stuff. But why would you want to do local government? You can bring a new perspective into government. You've got expertise and ideas that can come to an industry where we historically lag behind. So we're looking for people who bring that expertise and can help improve our processes and deliver better services to our communities and our constituents. So we lag behind a little bit because bureaucracy, and it exists for good reason. Sometimes it's a little excessive, but we have a system of checks and balances. We have public records that we need to maintain. And then we need to be good stewards of public funding and those dollars, your taxes, all of that kind of stuff. So we're inherently more risk averse, which means we move a little slower and there's a little bit of red tape, but that doesn't mean there's not a place for you in this industry. There's also a lot of jobs open in government. Governmentjobs.com is a really great place to find government work. They are managed by a larger group called NeoGov. And NeoGov is an applicant tracking system software tool, but they also are shifting toward a more human resources information system tool. And they have a lot of data to report on. And they recently reported that there's more jobs than applicants, and the number of applicants per job is way low, like historically low. Over my 10 years in HR, I remember seeing a lot of jobs that would have more than 100 people interested in them. We're lucky if we get 10 to 20 on average. The jobs that I write and announce get a lot more, but I think it's because I write really good job announcements. But we just have seen a big decline in the number of applicants. So jobs are there. This is a great opportunity to make a shift if you're looking at doing that. And we'll talk about transferable skills a lot, but the skills you have do transfer into government. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to communicate that, highlight that in a way that's going to get you noticed, and hopefully get you into an interview. So I want to spend some time talking about what you can expect in the hiring process and just in a government recruitment. Timeline is a big one. That's why I put this very basic graphic up. We have longer timelines in the government side of recruitment. You might notice on a job announcement that there is a really clear closing date. So jobs are often open for a period of time, and then they will come off of that website. And that's when the recruiting team gets to work on selecting who they want to interview, evaluating those candidates. So you generally won't really hear from anyone until after that deadline has passed. So it's not like in the private sector where we see a good candidate on the line and we want to snag them really quick. We actually have processes that we need to follow. Those can be because we have rules that our organizations created. It could be because we have union contracts that we need to abide by. So there can be a lot of reasons for that, that difference in timeline. And there's also more limitations on the recruiting staff's capabilities. Not that they can't do the job, but that there's not a lot of them in a lot of these government organizations. You'll see in bigger tech companies, in just larger corporations, they got whole teams for hiring. Some of our smaller government agencies might have one or two people that do that. So it just might move a little bit slower than what you would be used to on the private side. The application materials, I think there's a lot of similarities, but here's what you can expect. Likely a job application, sometimes a resume in lieu of that, sometimes a resume in addition to that, which is really annoying. And some places don't do that, but a lot of them still do. So you might kind of need to duplicate your materials a little bit. There also might be the opportunity or requirement to provide a cover letter. And I'll talk about how you can use cover letters a couple slides ahead. I hate cover letters. I don't like writing them. I don't like spending a ton of time reading them, but a lot of people do, and a lot of like traditional hiring managers hold on to that. So it could be a requirement, and it also could be really helpful for you as you're shifting into the government sector. We also have a lot of supplemental questions that we like to ask in an application. One of the reasons that we do that is because we're working hard on eliminating barriers to entry for employment. So the job requirements might be lower than what you would think they are to generate a larger applicant pool. And then having supplemental questions gives us the opportunity to further refine that candidate pool down based on those responses. And I'll give you some tips on cover letters and supplemental questions a little bit later this afternoon. You also might be asked to provide a work sample. That might come up. It's less common, but I do see it happen on occasion. And then you may need to do a civil service exam, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is on the next slide. So once your application's in and you've followed all of my advice today and they ask you to do an interview, you'll probably have a series of interviews. There's usually a pre-screen, and you're probably very familiar with that. Those can happen with a recruiter, with just an HR team member, even the hiring manager, or a subject matter expert. So there's likely going to be a phone or virtual, pretty quick 15, 20-minute screening to just get your alignment with the role and make sure that you have a clear understanding about the position and that your skill set aligns with it. You might also participate in a panel interview. We love a panel interview in government where we bring a lot of people in to grill you with questions and then put our heads together and decide if we want to move you forward or not. So you may end up on a panel interview where there's, 5 other interviewees or interviewers asking you those questions. They could be the hiring manager, HR staff, could even be external people that don't work in the organization, but that partner with the organization. So we'll often ask, as a water utility, folks from our city government if they want to help evaluate candidates, and we do the same for them. So you might actually have people who don't even work there helping to evaluate you. And then there's generally a final interview or an executive interview. That could be a one-on-one with a hiring manager. It could be with like a leadership level role. It could be with a city council or a governing body. It's just going to vary based on the role, but there's usually kind of a final interview where they really seal the deal or are really trying to narrow it between 2 candidates and find the best person for the role. It's a little bit about that interview process. And because there's a lot of people involved with it, it also takes time to get that coordinated and scheduled. So be patient if you make it to that part of a process. There's also the offer letter and your opportunity to negotiate your salary and your total compensation. You'll notice on a lot of government jobs that the salaries are posted like 99% of the time. You know what you're walking into. It's not something you see on the private side. We do that for transparency. We put that in our budgets, which are posted publicly online, pretty easy to find. So that information's out there, and it'll give you a sense of what you can expect for salary and for your earnings potential. And the offer time, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, is your opportunity to kind of ask for whatever the heck you want. So you get like one shot, and once you're in, you're in. So I'll give you some tips on things to consider and things you might want to ask for. And then the background check part, this is kind of that due diligence that a government agency will do before bringing you on board. It could include a criminal background check. It could include a credit check. That's more rare, but for some higher level finance positions, that's common. We'll call your references. So list people who like you. Be really careful about that and give them a heads up that they'll get a call. We also do an education and employment verification, make sure your experience that you shared aligns with what actually happened. And if you're going for a public safety position, emergency management might come in here, even some public health roles, you'll probably have a much more extensive background check process. Could involve physical exams. It could involve a psychological exam. When I worked for a small city, we had a fire department and a police department, and we would put them through a psych exam because they see messed up shit all the time, and you got to make sure people can handle that. So that could be something if that's the kind of role you're looking in at moving into, or even if you're looking at moving into like an analytical role in one of those teams, you might need to have a more extensive background check. Let's talk about that civil service exam, because it's a unique thing that doesn't happen in the private sector, but it is real common in the public sector. Full disclosure, I don't work for a civil service organization. It's not something that we do, but it is common in federal jobs, nearly all of them, probably all of them, a lot of state jobs, and a number of local government jobs at like a city, a county, or a special district. I threw out on the slide a couple examples of the organizations, bureaus, or types of jobs that might require this. Pretty much all that federal stuff, you'll have to do it. But even things like an accountant or an HR position or an IT position, those might include that too. And certainly almost all those public safety roles will have a civil service exam component. The exam can include a variety of things. It's not the same every single time. It's really geared toward the position itself. So you can't fully prepare because it's not always the same, but you can have a good sense of what to expect. Written and verbal sections. So you may need to, respond to questions in a narrative form. You may need to upload a video responding to questions or go to a testing site and actually have that be part of it where we're talking to someone. Multiple choice tests can come up on this, and even some job simulation stuff. You might see that more in like a physical exam, more for those public safety roles. But honestly, like even like a typing proficiency exam could be part of it because we want to make sure that like you know how to type. So I'm sure all of you are good at that. If you are nervous about taking tests or you just want to make sure that you are as prepared as you can be, there is a lot of test prep available online for civil service exams. Job Test Prep is an online source that has a free practice test. So you could, take a shot at that and see how you do. The bigger testing sites like Kaplan and Memetrics will also have paid civil service exam test prep. It is really common for a civil service exam to have a 70% pass rate. So if you get a 70 or higher, you're probably good to go. If you really want to, be in that upper percentile on that, I would recommend spending some time prepping for that exam. But if you're really confident test taker, you might not need to. And they're really testing for like basic level stuff. They're making sure that you've got the basic skills to perform the duties of the job. It's not going to be hyper advanced mathematics or things like that. It's a screening tool. It is not going to guarantee you a job, but it is a screening tool to make sure that they're advancing folks that have that skill set into the next round of interviews or next round of the process. All right. So the best way to land an interview and be on your way to getting a job is to look good on paper. So I recommend that you take a look at the job announcement and the job description. Some postings will only have the job description, but you might see more common now and moving forward, kind of a more marketing, salesy type job announcement that's trying to lure people in to apply for the role. So really review the job announcement and the job description and pull out some of those keywords and key themes that they're looking for and try to incorporate that into your resume, your application materials, your cover letter, all of that good stuff. I highly recommend that you have an ATS friendly resume. ATS is applicant tracking system. ATSs do not screen your resumes. Humans do that. We read every resume or application that comes in. The ATS is really like an online filing cabinet, and it just helps us stay organized. But there's not a bot in there that's going to boot you out because you didn't have enough keywords in your resume or anything like that. I recommend that you have those woven throughout your application materials because the actual people that read them are going to be looking for that. So it's a good thing to do. The ATS friendly resume, you can just Google that and see a bunch of templates. They're basic and boring. Unlike the graphic on that slide, no picture, no frills. It's really simple, like a average font, like Times New Roman, bullet points, chronological order. It looks boring. But one of the reasons we want you to have an ATS friendly resume is because that software will often take your information and then spit it back out into some kind of a report that can go to a hiring manager. And if you've got a bunch of crazy fonts, colors, graphics, photos, that kind of stuff, it gets all messed up. So the more basic, the better on your resume. Focus on your content. That's what's going to get you noticed. Government's not known for being fancy or frilly, and we don't want the resumes to look any different than that either. Supplemental questions are a great opportunity for you to highlight your skill set and those transferable skills. But it's also a screening tool, because when we see people half-ass those supplemental questions, we just throw them out. So if you've got a narrative supplemental question in your application materials, I recommend that you spend some time, craft like a 4 to 5 sentence paragraph, and use that rather than, a list of bullets, or, just a really basic response. Like, we read those, and it's actually a really important part of the screening process. So take your time on those, and make sure you answer the question, and that you give enough context that it's easy to understand your point in your response. Yes, the slide is look good on paper, but you got to look good online too. I hear in kind of the HR circles that, we shouldn't be looking at LinkedIn. We should only look at the application materials. We shouldn't look at social media. And spoiler alert, we all look at that. Like, we want to make the best hiring decision that we can make. And so looking at things online, Googling people is something we do all the time. So do a check on your LinkedIn, make sure that it aligns with the experience that you described in your resume. Titles can vary a little bit, but they should generally be pretty similar. Dates, months and years are important on that. And just that, we can kind of get a sense of your skills and expertise from your LinkedIn profile. I always recommend that you Google yourself every so often. You never know what might come up. So just make sure nothing weird comes up. And do a check on your social media pages. Government, we are a little more risk averse. If all your pictures are of you doing a beer bong at a party, we are probably going to pass on you. Not that you can't have like a cocktail on occasion and take a picture of that, but we look at trends, and if there's a lot of partying, if there's a lot of really questionable memes that you post all the time, racist or sexist language, like, you're not going to make it through. So just do a little scrub on that and make sure you don't have anything weird in your online presence. And then before you click submit on your application materials, you got this long window to apply almost all the time. So work on your draft and then step away from it, come back and look at it with fresh eyes, revise, edit, proofread, and enlist the help of a friend or a peer to take a look at those materials before you hit submit. It's so frustrating to see when someone submits application materials and they got the hiring manager's name wrong on the cover letter, or there's a big typo somewhere in there and it's just really glaring. The best typo we see in the public sector is people forget the L in public. And that's a good one. So just watch for that kind of stuff. It's not like it's going to just detract your application materials, but it's nice to be polished and professional. So let's talk about how you can adjust your language to communicate what your skills and your experience are to a government recruiter or hiring manager, HR professional, any of those folks. I put the little groan in there on cover letters. I don't like asking people for them. I rarely make it a requirement of a job application. But it might be a really helpful tool if you're shifting industries, because it gives you some space to fill in content and help bridge that gap between where you're at right now and how you can see yourself fitting into a government job. So I think they can be a really helpful tool in situations where you're switching industries. And the supplemental questions is also an opportunity to do that too. So use those kinds of tools to help make the case about how you can transfer into this industry successfully and what you can bring to it. You're going to definitely want to explain any of your unfamiliar roles to government. So I have a couple examples up here. We don't have product managers in government. It's just not a common thing that we see. Customer success managers, design work is more limited. Web design we have a little bit more of now, but it's that's often something that's contracted out. And any like user experience stuff, that's different, different language than we use in the government side of things. So certainly if that's your title, use that in your resume and your application materials, but use those supplemental questions, a cover letter, even the bullets in your resume to help explain what you do, and help us as recruiters see you in the new role. What you want to focus on, in my opinion, is things like your project management. So government is like a series of services that are accomplished through either projects or programs. And so project management, being able to manage a project from start to finish on time, within budget, meeting your performance metrics, that is a great thing to highlight, and to align with kind of how we think in the government sector. Working on cross-functional teams is also something I think you should highlight. We get a lot of stuff done through partnerships with other government agencies, nonprofits, and private sector companies. But internally, we work within cross-departmental teams all the time. When I just started my role here at the Water District, I had a shitload of meetings when I started, and so many of them were committee meetings. But that's because committees actually get a lot of projects done, and they're cross-functional. There's people from a variety of departments and roles that are on those committees. So highlighting how you get to work within organizations with other departments externally is something you really want to bring to light. And then how you have been able to sell ideas and move initiatives forward. That's also a really positive thing to bring up. Like, how were you a change maker? But in a way, I don't know if this is great advice, but like in a way that doesn't scare anyone in government, because they are risk averse. So selling an idea, but being able to back it up with good recommendations, data, that kind of stuff is also really great to highlight. And think about where your skills and experience can improve in government. So communications is a huge one. I think that's been a big criticism of government at all levels, that people aren't informed. They don't know what's going on. Your ability to communicate clearly, online, in writing, public speaking, bringing people together, that kind of stuff is a really good thing to highlight. Process improvement. We talked a little bit about bureaucracy earlier. It exists for a reason, but I find things constantly that's like, we're doing this in an inefficient way, or this is super redundant and we need to stop. So process improvement, where you've saved money, saved time, found efficiencies, those are great things to highlight. How you have scaled things up, whether it's a tool or product that you've worked on. In government, we do pilot projects all the time. You'll see this a lot. We're seeing it a lot right now with responding to the homeless crisis that we're experiencing across the country, where cities will put forth a small pilot project with a small group of people or a neighborhood. And then if it's successful, they'll scale it up. So if you've been able to scale things up, that's a nice skill set to demonstrate and to communicate about. And then resource management. We operate with budgets that are open to the public. They can see how much money we have and what we spend it on. And we need to be good stewards of those dollars. So if you're able to manage resources well, to not blow budgets on projects, to find affordable solutions to things, excellent stuff to highlight in your application materials. Want to talk just a little bit about how you negotiate your job offer in government, because it's going to feel a little bit different than in the private sector. So offers come before a background check. So you want to make sure you review an offer carefully before accepting it. And this is that time that you get to ask for the things that you want. So I really encourage, if you get an offer, whether it's verbal, don't say yes immediately. Say, cool, like send me the written offer and I want to consider that, give me a couple of days. And then think about, what else you want to ask for, or if it really aligns with what your expectations were for the role. You will likely find that in government work, salaries straight across from public to private sector aren't going to be the same. Public sector's usually a little bit lower. And we also don't have parts of compensation like equity options, stock options, bonuses. That kind of stuff is just way either not in government or way less common. A sign-on bonus could be a little bit more common. I asked for one and I got it. So those might happen, but the stuff that you might be used to, your Q4 bonuses that you get, that we don't do that kind of stuff in the government side. But you want to look at your total compensation in the offer. So things like retirement, paid time off, cost of health insurance, those kinds of things, and see if you can get to kind of an apples to apples comparison. So your total compensation really aligns with where you want to be. Some of the perks that we have in the public sector look a little different than they do in the private sector. I always like to push the work-life balance and the schedule. It's pretty rare to find people in government working 60, 70-hour work weeks. It's just way less common. Most are working about 40, and on occasion it goes up a little bit, but it's not a consistent thing. There are outliers in that, but on average, it's a better work-life balance, in my opinion. The schedule can be really nice. A lot of times it's a set schedule. So our offices are 7 to 4:30 and we get every other Friday off, and it's pretty sweet. And most people adhere to that. But there also is probably a lot of flexibility depending on the role that you go for or the agency that you work with. So start and stop times, days off, that kind of stuff, that's all part of the package deal that you can negotiate. Our health insurance is generally really low cost, which is a huge benefit of working for the public sector. It's oftentimes low cost because cities and counties, special districts, state government and federal government are able to pool their resources to negotiate for lower rates from, the big healthcare providers. So you'll often find there is a cost share for employees and the employer in the public sector of a 5-95% split. That means most people's insurance is like $100 to $200 a month. That's a pretty sweet deal. I've a lot of my friends that work in the private sector, it's $500 a month or more. If you got kids, it's higher. If you got spouses, it's higher. So that's also a big positive that you can consider. And then we also have retirement and pension options. So in Oregon, a lot of public employers like a city, state, county are part of the state retirement system. Universities, hospitals are also part of that a lot of the time. And that is different than like a 401k benefit, something like that. It's a defined benefit. So when you retire, you know what you're going to get every month. So there's just more certainty in that. It's just a different way of doing it. Professional development is a big thing. We got a lot of government conferences, professional associations. Those are things to consider. And then paid time off. So it's usually not all in one big bucket of PTO. You'll find oftentimes it's vacation accrual, sick leave accruals, personal days, all the holidays. So usually it's like 10 or 11 holidays a year. So you can get a lot of time off, and that can be a great thing if you're looking at finding better work-life balance. And then in the negotiation process, you might notice some limitations on what the government agency is able to do to negotiate with you. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Union contracts is one of those, but there's a lot of equal pay rules coming up across the country. Oregon has one. Many states have those now, and your own organization or that organization might have rules about bringing people in so they're at the same level as people in similar roles. They might have a rule that's like no one starts above the midpoint. You might be able to find some of those on their website, but those are things you can talk about with the recruiter. So just expect some limitations on the negotiation process, but don't let that keep you from asking for what you want, because you get like one shot to ask it. All right, so let's say you get the job. Congratulations.
Kylie, this is Jen at the Beeck Center. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to do a quick time check. We have about 3 more minutes left.
Okay, I have 2 slides and I will hammer through.
All right, fantastic.
So I'm going to talk really quick. So you get the job. So when you get the job, you're going to have a really steep learning curve because it's a totally different industry. So just get ready to be a little uncomfortable. Focus your time on building trust and relationships in your team and across the organization. It's going to do wonders for you. Be humble and be, have some humility. The thing that you may want to change the most that you think is a big problem, the lady who invented that probably works there. So don't shit on someone's project. Expect incremental changes versus overnight changes. And that's still a trend in the right direction. We just move slower. We're more risk averse. So expect that. And then there's fewer collaboration tools in the public sector. That's because of records rules that we have where we have to maintain records. It's also due to online security rules. So just be aware of that. And then quickly, bonus tips on getting your government job. Request informational interviews from people who are in roles that sound interesting to you. Everyone likes to talk about what they do. So reach out, check on our websites, budgets, strategic plans. All those are available online. So dive in. It helps you understand the values and the priorities of those organizations. Go to a public meeting. Do that anyways. No one ever goes, and it's a great way to see your government in action. You can shadow a public administration class if you're feeling really lost about how government works, and just ask your local public administration program at a university if you can join in. They usually let you. You can attend or present at a government conference. It's a great way to meet people and then build your network. And on your network, you can add me online. So there's my socials. There's my email if you want to get a hold of me. I want to push the group that coordinated today, but also the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network. A lot of activity on Twitter and social media from them. And it's a great way to build your presence within the local government scene. So thank you. And we went right up to time, and I don't think I have time for questions.